Well, hello and welcome to another webinar here with Veteran Social Summit and also our friends from Silicon Slopes, the military chapter out of Utah. We have a really exciting panel here with some really distinguished guests. We're very blessed to have them here, including Lisa Duckworth, Dale Brockbank, and David Allen. Lisa, I know, will definitely introduce them and give them their full respect and description of who they are and the amazing work that they're doing. And today they're going to be talking about something that's definitely important, especially in the National Guard, Reserve, and I would even argue on the active duty side of the house, which is the military leave rights and protections. This is important as you go off, as you have to leave your job, you're called to service, and then you're deployed. What happens when you return? And I think they're going to be able to answer that in a lot more detail than old Ryan here. I do want to thank you again. With Veteran Social Summit 2026 is returning virtually everywhere on 9 and 10 September. We're very excited about this one. Come join the wait list at www.veteransocialsummit.com. And we have a lot of very engaging webinars coming up this year. So we're very excited about that. And we hope you would join us, join our newsletter, which you can find on LinkedIn. And you can also find at the website I just gave a few minutes ago there, veteransocialsummit.com. Okay, enough of that. Let's bring on the panel. You're not here for Ryan. You're here for these exciting people and this very relevant topic. With that, Lisa, I'm handing it over to you, and I am going to leave the stage.
Okay, watch out. I'm loose now. So good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Duckworth. I'm a military veteran employer liaison for the state of Utah. It's also known nationally as the local veteran employment representative. And it's my pleasure today to help you better understand the employment and reemployment rights that you have. And I'd also like to add that this is a lot of times whenever things kind of heat up, I guess you'd say, that there's a lot of people that may be thinking about joining the military. And so, if you are thinking of maybe enlisting, this information would also be very helpful for you as well. And so we want to make sure that is covered there as well. We have the infamous and notorious, the legend, Mr. Dale Brockbank. He's our Utah DVET here with the Department of Labor. I'm not sure what DVET, I'm horrible at acronyms, so I'll let Dale just tell us a little bit about yourself. And yeah.
I'm the Utah Director for U.S. Department of Labor Veterans Employment and Training Service. There's kind of two halves of what we do. First of all, I provide some money to the state for veteran trips to help people get jobs. So we help people get jobs, and then we have another part of what we do, and that is enforcement. And we handle cases under the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. We do investigations and try to determine if a member of the Uniformed Services has been treated correctly under the federal statute, Title 38 of the United States Code. We also handle veterans preference cases. We don't get many of those against the federal government. So if someone applies for a federal job and they feel they haven't got their preference, we look at those cases, but there's very few of those. And that's basically who I am and what I do.
Awesome. And also, I'd like to introduce our other guests. We have Mr. David Allen. David is with the Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, ESGR. I do know that acronym. And for the state of Utah. And so it's my pleasure to introduce David. David, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself? And yeah.
Well, we'll give it a try. So I was in the National Guard for about 33 years. I started out with the first 12 years in the Special Forces, the 19th Special Forces here in Utah. I was then transferred to the 142nd Military Intelligence linguist guys, and I became the command sergeant major for the 142nd Battalion. I was there for a while under the then Major Tarbett. And then we moved to California, and I became part of the 40th Infantry Division, and became a first sergeant there for a while, and was then transferred to the division staff for the 140th, and that's where I retired.
Nice. And you're the state chairman for the ESGR here for Utah as well?
Yes, I started out here about 8 years ago as just a member of the ESGR, working in the Salt Lake City area. And then our infamous Kim Watts decided to retire a year or so ago.
How dare he?
Yes, how dare he?
Okay.
And for some reason, I ended up replacing him as the state chair. And it's been a marvelous experience, and I love doing what I'm doing because we're helping the soldiers stay in their jobs.
Definitely. And so let's see, we've got Army. David, you're Army, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Army.
Army in the house. Me too. So we didn't mean to do that. It's just, that's just how cool we are. So no, I'm kidding. So without further ado, I'd love to let David and Dale kind of take the lead here and just give us kind of an overview. I mean, about what are, we have the USERRA laws, and then I know in 2025 they review. It looks like they did some reviews and did some small amendments to it, and so I felt that was important because a lot of times we hear about these, policies and procedures, and you're like, and it's like from 1940, and you're kind of wondering, has anybody looked at that? And so it was refreshing for me to see that there has been consistent review, making sure that this program and what the protections it's supposed to provide actually work. And so that's something that I think is very helpful for a lot of people to understand. Like, this is not just some old thing we're dusting off. This is something we actively use, and it's current and it's relevant. So would you like to kind of give us a little overview, Dale? Or
let me just give you a little bit of a history and where we are and where we've come from. Actually, in 1940, before the Second World War, was the first statute that went in to help members of the National Guard and Reserve and active when they went on military duty and left an employer. That act was, well, the first thing it said is the veterans or members of the uniformed services should get their job back. And that was passed in 1940. Through the years, that has been modified and modified and modified. One of the biggest things is there's an anti-discrimination clause in there, which basically says the member of the uniformed services cannot be discriminated against because of their military service. It isn't because they're a member of the Army, National Guard, or active duty. It's because of their uniformed service, and an employer can't take action against you because of that. One of the big things that happened, there was a landmark case that said the member of the uniformed services doesn't go back into the job they had when they left. They went into the job they would have had they remained on the job. So if there's any promotions, or if there's anything like that happens while they're gone, if they can show they got that benefit while had they remained on the job, they get that benefit. And then things were added to make sure that other benefits were added, such as health care. And there's a way they can get their health care if they're gone. And through the years, it was modified and modified. And then a few years ago, USERRA was enacted, which codified a lot of the cases and stuff and made it a lot more simple so people could understand the law better. There's also out in the Code of Federal Regulations there that better describe what the law says and how it's applied to various situations. And that has helped a great deal to make sure that people understand the law. Let me explain exactly what happens. First of all, if someone has a complaint and they get to me, I send them over to ESGR if there's any chance that we can resolve it at that level, and someone from ESGR goes out and talks to the employer in a non-confrontive manner and says, you have a member of the uniformed service that works for you. It appears that you could be breaking the law, and here's what the law says about it. ESGR has that for a very short period of time, and hopefully it's resolved there by negotiations. If that doesn't happen, they have the right to file a complaint with United States Department of Labor. So we have a website and we refer them there, and they fill out a complaint form called a 1010, and then that is transferred to the state where the decision was made that was negative toward the member of the uniformed services. The next step is we have to contact the member first, and we go over that complaint form and make sure we understand exactly what the complaint is. Once we understand that, we call the employer, and we have to talk to the employer before we can go forward. That sometimes becomes problematic if it's a big, huge corporation. You have to call and get them online or whatever and say, it appears that that there might be a problem here. We need to try to settle that. And so the next step is we send out an opening letter, one to the member of the uniformed services, one to the employer, and outline what's going on, and that we're going to conduct an investigation. And where are the investigators in this? And we represent the law. We don't represent the employer. We don't represent the member of the uniformed services. So we have to be very careful to ensure that both of them, both the employer and the member, realizes it's a fair system, and that they have to be able to prove that actions were taken, again, normally because they were a member of, or because they're military duty. Again, the basis of all this is we want to ensure they get their job back when they come back from military duty. They have to meet certain standards, and if they meet those standards, the employer is required to re-employ them. Now, there's some defenses with the employer, and that defense is basically, if while that member is on duty, we call it reorganization. It basically means if they laid a bunch of people off or changed the way they operate, and that job doesn't exist anymore, then that is an employer defense. And so we collect evidence both from the member of the uniformed services and the employer, and we put all that together and do an investigation. It all goes into a computer where it's reviewed and make sure we have all the evidence we need to make that determination. Once it gets in there, we have to make a determination. That determination again is, has the statute been violated? And if it has, we send a letter back to the member of the uniformed services and says, yes, there's a case here. And we also send in a letter to the employer. And at that point, we try to negotiate a settlement. We don't want it to go any farther than that. We want to make sure, if we can, to negotiate a settlement that's fair to the employer and meets the standards of the Act. We also, the other side of that, if we find there isn't enough evidence to prove the member of the uniformed services hasn't been treated fairly under the Act, we send them a letter saying we do not find that there's sufficient evidence to justify this claim. At that point, down at the bottom of that letter, it explains to them they have several options. Number one option, even if we find there's no merit, they have the option of requesting that the United States Department of Justice reviews our investigation and determines again whether the statute has been violated. Or they have the option of hiring a private attorney at their own expense and take it into a federal court. Again, we don't want these cases to end up in a federal court. We want to negotiate a settlement again that's fair to both parties. And then at that point, that we have to write up the case if they want it referred, and it goes through my Dallas office where it's reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. Then it goes to my office, U.S. Department of Labor in Washington, D.C., where that referral is again reviewed. And then it goes over to the solicitor's office of U.S. Department of Labor, and they make a final recommendation. And then it goes over to the United States Department of Justice. And between the solicitor and the Department of Justice, they make a determination whether the law has been violated. And again, they try to negotiate with the employer, and the member of the uniformed service says, we need to settle this. We don't want this in a federal court. If that fails, they have the right to, that case then comes back to Utah and goes into a federal court. We really don't want that to happen. We want to negotiate a fair settlement of the case. And if it doesn't have merit, they send them a letter back to the member of the uniformed services that basically says, we don't find that the violation has taken place, and we have chosen not to represent you. And once that letter goes out, that's the final thing we do. I've had members of the uniformed services say, I'm going to call Senator so-and-so, or I'm going to make sure that this gets in the court through the Department of Justice. That doesn't happen. Once that final decision is made by the Department of Justice, that ends the case. And if they want to pursue it, they have to hire a private attorney and take it into court. So that's basically how the whole system works. Does anybody have any questions for me?
It's a lot. Nothing but questions, Dale, after that. No. One thing I'd want to understand, because we heard a lot about like if things go wrong. And I know ESGR does a lot to kind of prep both service members and employers on what their responsibilities are. David, could you talk about some of the things that you guys do to help people know exactly what they can do to prevent all that messiness and not go to federal court and have all the investigations? Like, how do we do it the right way?
Well, one of the best things that the ESGR here in Utah can provide is, step one is to inform the uniformed soldiers just exactly what the law does to protect them, how it protects their job, and all of those steps that Dale just talked about a little bit, so that when they talk to their employer, they can speak with a little bit of knowledge about what the law, how the law protects the soldier. On the other hand, one of the best things we do also is to work with the employers. The employers, for the most part, most of the time have some small knowledge of the USERRA laws. They don't really understand exactly what they are and how it relates to them. So one of our key issues is to train the employers. We love to work with the HR people. We try to get as close to that person in the company who is responsible for the regulations of the company and how they treat their employees. And so if we can physically meet and train the company people, their staff, their HR person, what the law requires of them and what the law requires their soldiers to do, most of the time when there's a problem, it's a miscommunication of one or the other side doesn't really understand what they're supposed to do and what they are allowed to do. And so if we can meet directly with the HRs. We try as best we can. One of the best places we try is the SHRM meetings, but sometimes that doesn't work as well either because we really can't get to the right people in the right way. So that's basically in a nutshell what the USGR does, and we're very, very good at it, and we love what we do working with the soldiers.
I love it. I love it. And one thing and it's funny because I partner with ESGR. I obviously partner with Dale, but they have these USERRA. You guys have a lot of different materials that can really help people understand what exactly they need to know and what their rights are and what their notification requirements are as well. And so I keep this little book in my purse now and it's with me pretty much all the time because I never know when somebody's going to have a question about it. Like even recently I was out at a networking thing and I met the mother of a Space Force member, our guardian, and they were talking about deployment in place, and I was like, wow, they're just things are always evolving and changing, and so we don't realize that there could be unique situations that seem a little odd to employers, but maybe not the service member so much. But when you're an employer and you're like, a deployment in place, what does that mean? Or and so there are unique things that happen as situations evolve that we can navigate, and we have amazing resources to do that. So,
ideally, also, when we try to meet with the HR, we have those little pamphlets that you just showed. We try to get one of those physically into their hands so they can actually read through the books and the steps and what the requirements are. And again, that every time we can do that, it slows down any complaints because now everybody's understanding exactly what it is and how they're protected.
Definitely. Well, what are let's see. I think we should. How about we open it up for some questions? Do we have any questions in the chat, or if we don't, we have a little question bank. I can throw some out. And just to let I am actually a certified senior professional of HR, and I've been on. I actually helped ESGR participate in some of our past state conferences, and so I definitely realize the importance of having that partnership. And it's been very helpful for me in my career in human resources. But I also human resources, most have a lot of influence, but really it's our regular managers that work with our veterans and service members every day that really make the impact. And so if there's anyone here that, if you're not an HR person, that's okay, because we want you here. If you have an interest, listen up, because this really applies to everyone. We need everyone in the community to really support people as they're going through these things. And also, if somebody's, they feel like they're feeling very patriotic and they want to go enlist, let's support them in their decision to do that, and make sure they know that we're going to protect their job if they want to return to it when they come back. And if they don't, that's okay too. But we're going to follow the law, and we're going to do what's right. So do we have some questions, Ryan?
No one's really asking any questions. They're more just celebrating the conversation and wishing us, thanking us for our service, and also, we do have one. Actually, there we go. Thank you, West. I took it off the screen there.
Ooh, they're really, now they're pumping in.
Good question. I was going to say, so what's the advantage of an employer hiring somebody in the military? What does that do? What does it
Everything. Mean? Oh, sorry.
Absolutely. So there are such amazing skills that these men and women bring to their employers. The ability to take charge, to be a leader and to also be a follower. They know how to communicate. They know how to show up on time. They know how to dress well. They know how to speak with people. They know how to solve problems. This is just a small sampling of what they're very good at and have been well trained at.
Perfect. And we have another question
Yes,
actually
something to
from
add.
Weston.
You know,
Go ahead.
one thing too, because, for a long time, I consider, I'm an Army veteran and I've been working in human resources for longer than I want to admit, because then I don't want to date myself. But there were lots of times where, I lost my train of thought. I should have drank more coffee, but wouldn't you want to have an amazing employee, no matter what, even if it was, like you have the risk of any of your employees needing to take some kind of leave. And if you look at it that way, like anybody you hire, you don't know what's going on in their personal life. You don't know if they're going to maybe need to take some leave. But this is just, you already kind of are alerted ahead of time. If your service member lets you know that they are a member of the armed forces, you know that, okay, well, we'll have to keep that in the back of our mind, that may be something we'll need to address in the future. But it definitely is something you can very well navigate. I know, like I'm in one HR position, almost our entire legal team was all reservists and National Guard. So they get called up a lot. And so there were many times we were running a skeleton legal crew because they were deployed. And that was okay. We figured it out. We knew, we built plans to prepare for it, and we navigated it the best we could. So did you have anything you want to add?
Well, the federal government spends a huge amount of money training members of the uniformed services, not only in technical skills. And if you look at the modern military, it's very, very high tech. The weapons they use, the kind of tools they use, and what they're able to do is very, very high tech. And those skills should be a great advantage to civilian employers. Not only that, in the schools that the military puts people through as far as leadership and handling people, those skills are very, very great too. So you get a person that's very highly skilled, not in the old days where they didn't have very many skills. The modern members of the uniformed services are highly skilled in a great many areas, and they should be a great value to your average civilian employer.
Looks like we have another question. Let's see. Do any of these protections apply to veterans post-service? So does that mean when they're out of the military or they've returned from employment? Can you?
Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, unless you can.
Well, if they're out of the military, the same rules apply. They have to show that their military service was the motivating factor in any adverse actions taken by an employer. And the longer someone is out of the military, it's harder to make a link between their military service and to show that that was the reason that the employer took action against them. I guess the other thing is retirement, because when they're in the military service, the retirement is supposed to continue to grow. And so sometimes after they've been out of the military for a while, if the employer hasn't made contributions in their retirement account and other things similar, then they could have a case through USERRA.
And I just want to mention actually, I have some FAQs that I pulled from the ESGR website, and I did see there was a question that's kind of related to that as well. And it just says, like, is there a limit on total amount of service in the uniformed services that an employee may perform and still retain reemployment rights with the employer? Sorry, my braces are getting in the way. But it does say yes. In general, the employee may perform service in the uniformed services, armed services, for a cumulative period of up to 5 years under the current statute and retain reemployment rights with that employer.
That's true, but there's exceptions that certain types of service add to that 5 years.
Yes.
And there are some, a lot of it is initial training and certain types of training. And if they're called to duty under certain parts of the federal law, that time does not count toward their 5-year limit. So there could be people that have gone well beyond that, and we have to go back and look at each time that they've left their civilian employer and look at and say, does this count toward the 5-year limit or it does not? And again, there's sections of the federal law that they could be called to duty on that don't count toward that 5-year limit.
Yeah, and there's a long list. We're not for time's sake, we're not going to go through that today, but we're going to share, where those resources can be found. So whenever you do need to have that information, or you're curious and you want to learn more, then you can dive in and you can look at that details. So let's see. Was there another? We were chatting. I want to make sure I didn't miss any other questions. So the question showing is the one.
This is a new question.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going to read it out loud for everyone. So what is in place for spouses of service members who are a part of this SM's family care plan? Is that service member? And in my case, my wife is a service member in the National Guard, but the stay-at-home parent. She will be leaving for 5+ months, meaning I have a full-time job and childcare to juggle. Well, much love goes to you, first of all, Chris, and your wife and your family. What do you guys have to say about that, Dale or David?
Right now, there isn't anything that covers it under USERRA. I know that during the Biden administration, they looked very, very closely at what was happening with spouses when a member of the uniformed service was deployed or gone, or even active duty members and the unemployment rate of their spouses. I know there was meetings in the White House that addressed all these concerns, but I don't know if anything ever came of those. But I think that's the thing we need to look at in the future, because part of it is because when, particularly during Vietnam, most people that went in the military didn't have families that were relying on them. Most of them were either going to school or getting jobs, and younger, and they didn't have the responsibilities of families. And so that wasn't an issue. But more and more, as we've used the National Guard and Reserve, that the burden on the families at home has gone up greatly. And I know people in Congress are looking at that very hard, but I don't know that anything has come out yet. But I think we need to press the United States Congress to look at this a lot stronger and come out with some better answers to help the families of members of the uniformed services.
Yeah.
Well, here also,
and it sounds like this is a dual military family, right? So it looks like it's the service member and the spouse are both serving, and so that it adds layers of complexity to it.
One of the advantages we have here, though, is that we have family programs, specifically in the National Guard and Reserve, that will supply skills and events and help for the spouse that's behind, whether programs for the kids or for the spouse in all kinds of areas that they don't want to be left out there hanging by themselves. So both the family programs are awesome here in the state of Utah.
Definitely. Yeah. So I do know whenever I was reading something, let's see, was there another question? To make sure
There's a comment from Kimberly from the state of Nevada.
Okay, so Kimberly Pickens, she says, Christopher, if you have not already, you should connect with the Military Family Readiness Department of your wife's unit.
Yep.
They oftentimes provide resources and free days of childcare.
That's correct.
Heck yeah.
Thanks, Kim.
I've seen some great examples of people coming together and really supporting the community. My neighbors were in the National Guard during Afghanistan, and they bought a house and built a house and then he got deployed. And so there were a lot of things that they really needed help with. And I remember seeing a whole National Guard unit over there just helping them out. And I thought that was really nice how, even though I guess the service member was away, we didn't let the family suffer or feel like they were, in neglect or they didn't have a support system for them. Yeah.
So what I'm going to make an addition here.
Please.
Here in Utah, the Utah National Guard is the big player in the program, but we also have a huge our Air Force Reserve at Hill Air Force Base. There's basically a full-time wing. We have a huge Navy Reserve unit at Hill Air Force Base. There's about 500 or 600 kids there. And we've got a couple of Marine units as well that are outside of the National Guard area, but they all have the same type of program and the same kind of support.
Well, there's also family support at Hill Air Force Base, but if families are having problems and they're members of the other armed forces, that they can get services through the family support unit there at Hill Air Force Base. And I know there's a lot of very, very highly competent and good people up there that'll try to help them as much as possible.
Definitely. And another organization that I know is really helpful for families is Blue Star Families. They've been a great advocate as well. And so I think one thing that I hear from all this is that there are support systems and resources in place to help. And so you reach out, Google, phone a friend, check out the resources and see what's going to help you for what's going on.
I think one of the other key areas of that is that we, and at least here in Utah, ESGR, one of our jobs is to get to the unit commanders, so that the unit commander is also aware of these events and these sources of help. And a lot of times the soldiers in the units may not even realize that it's there for them unless we can somehow get that information out and explain it to the right people.
It's true. So let's see, oh, do we have any more questions? If not, I have one that
actually, let's see, we have something just came through here. I'm not sure if it's a question or not. Let's see.
Oh, man. I'll read it out loud.
There's another question in there.
I want to make sure everybody here. Yeah. So thank you, Chris. That's great to know. My wife and I are actually both in the Guard. My second question, as far as I am aware, there is no formal deconfliction process for dual service families when both spouses have trainings, activations, or deployments at the same time. Generally, commanders can work something out, but there is nothing formalized in place and it does not always work out. So yeah, I think that does support what Dale had mentioned earlier, that while we know this is something that's happening, or the government is aware, it's a challenging process that they're still trying to figure out a better solution for.
Yeah, we need more action because they looked at the unemployment rate of spouses of people in the military and spouses of people that were deployed, and the unemployment rate was very, very high. I don't know if that's because they had to be there to take care of their children and stuff, but whenever possible, we need to help them become employed, and so they can support themselves while their member is serving.
Absolutely. So I have I have some questions, and I thought, well, if we don't get questions, I have them ready. There's a question here. It's a frequently asked question. Is the employee entitled to any specific reemployment benefits if he or she has a disability that was incurred in or aggravated during the period of service?
Well, the employer is required to look at that disability and try to find another job within their organization that person can do if they're disabled while they're on military duty. And they have to go step by step and look at all the jobs they have. Of course, it's a little harder if it's a small business, but if it's a large corporation or something, they have to look at every job they have in there and plug that veteran into another job, hopefully with the same seniority, status, and pay as if their previous job. If they can't find that, there's not much we can force them to do. That's the bad part of that part of the law. But no, the employer is supposed to look at every single job. And also, I had an instance where the member was employed by the military, and they weren't doing that for him. And so I had to get involved with that because they said, you have to find your own job within our organization or we're going to retire you. And I got involved in that and said, no, that doesn't get it. The organization has to go through those jobs and hopefully find that member a better job. And he was working out in a warehouse where he had to lift heavy things, and he was deployed to Korea, and loading a plane, he hurt his back. So he came back and couldn't do that job, and they were going to force him out of that job and force him to be retired. We got involved, and two of our honor lawyers in Washington got a hold of someone in the United States, that part of the military, and said, you need to fix this. So eventually they put him over in a job where he did the planning of taking care of all this equipment, so he didn't have to lift anything. He was no longer out in the warehouse. And he called and he says, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. I love my new job. I get paid the same amount. I don't have to go out there and work as hard. I was planning on retiring, but I'm going to work another 3 or 4 years because I got a better job.
I love it. I love it.
And again, it's hard when you're working for a little mom and pop organization where they don't have other jobs that they can do. But the same thing happened with the state of Utah, as a member was working out on one of the road crews up and down the freeway, and he hurt his leg. And when you're inside those cones working on the highway, if a car pulls over and is going to run over you, you've got to be able to run out of the way. And he also was driving a dump truck, and his leg was hurt so bad he couldn't push in the clutch. So what happened, and this is what we got down to. They were trying to tell me that the Utah Department of Transportation was his employer. And I said, no, that's not right. The state of Utah is his employer. You know,
whole organization.
you have to look at it. He ended up, there was a small college in a city where he worked, and they came up and says, we'll take that guy and we're going to train him to be a maintenance worker out there. And again, he got a lot better job he liked better. And so it didn't aggravate his disability. And there was just 2 cases. I don't know how often that happens, but again, we try to every way possible to have that employer find another job that doesn't aggregate. Ooh, I can't say that.
Aggravate him.
Aggravate his disability. I'm sorry about that.
Well, and also, as an HR professional, there's different ways to also look at it. You have the USERRA reemployment rights, but there's also, you have the American with Disabilities Act.
You also have the VA
medical leave.
The VA. There's voc rehab through the VA. And if you when you leave the military, if you can't do the job you did before you went in, the VA can train you for a job. And their goal is to find a job that doesn't make their disability work and train them for that job. And then we have staff that help them get a job once they leave a college or university where they've got voc rehab through the VA.
There's definitely some benefits and resources available that not only help the employer understand how to navigate this. There's also a really good amount of resources to help the service member individually be able to navigate it and maybe learn that they were missing out on an amazing job they didn't know they would really love. And so I think I love stories like that because it can be hard. Like if you incur a disability or you're injured and you come back and you're not able to do the same things you did, there are often opportunities you just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And people are often pleasantly surprised that those alternatives end up being really great ones. So, okay, well, it looks like we have another question from Kimberly Pickens. It says, I'm looking on the ESGR website, but I don't see a flyer or brochure for ESGR. Could I be missing it, or are you able to share one that I can then share?
I think that's my job.
Yep, that sounds like you, David.
If I can get a hold of Kimberly and I can go visit her or her work, and I can provide her with all of the information, the paperwork, the brochures, and be glad to do that.
Well, also, we have a flyer that describes USERRA, and every employer is supposed to have that posted where they have their minimum wage requirements and EEO requirements, and that's supposed to be posted within the employer so they know that ESGR is out there and USERRA is out there.
And also I can take these flyers, posters, and put them in each of the companies if they want one. I did that for several companies last week, and glad to do that.
Well, we'll let you hit Utah. I don't know if you want to go on a national tour.
That's what
Kimberly is, but hey, that's the great thing is that, David is here with Utah, but in other states, there's ESGR representatives everywhere. I would say there's probably even, I would dare say you might be international as well.
Every state and every territory of America has a ESGR program in that area. And if they're out of state,
right,
we can give them information for that state.
Definitely. Well, and I just a little bit about me, like this was for me myself, but whenever I was in the military, I was active duty, and so I would hear ESGR and all this stuff, and I'm like, well, that's not for me, or oh, it's for those other guys, and but ESGR is for all service members, correct? Or am I wrong there? I don't know.
You are correct.
Yeah. So don't let the name or the acronym fool you into thinking, because I know one thing that us veterans often do is we confuse eligibility with access. And so everyone has access to ESGR resources. If you have questions, I mean, I don't want Dale's phone to blow up and him yell at
Well,
me.
I think one of the problems
you have
is
access.
the various programs for veterans have different criteria to be eligible to use them, and either different definition of who's a veteran and who's not. And I think through the years, most recently, we've tried to pare those down a little bit. So because we're using the National Guard and Reserve a lot more than we ever had in the past, that they ought to be eligible for a lot more of the benefits, including state benefits for veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to get out there and find out what's available. You can go to the Utah Department of Veterans and Military Affairs, and they will provide you some guidance on the various programs that are available for veterans.
Yeah, and it looks like Becky. Oh, hi, Becky. I'm glad you were able to get on. But she put in there as a resources library on the ESGR website, and that's listed there. I'm not going to say it out loud because we're not going to be clicking. Yeah. And then there's also some other links to find your local ESGR contacts. And so again, ESGR is for everyone. And, employers, even if you're a small business and you're trying to figure out, like, how do I scale up? And hey, I want to hire a bunch of veterans, but what are my responsibilities? This is a great way to learn strategically than by, like, some of us learn by making mistakes. And you don't want to make a mistake with this. You want to do it, be knowledgeable, have the right information, and be able to move forward. Because even though if you don't know and you do something that it's just better to start off on the right foot. And then that makes it a better experience for both you and your service member. And then they feel supported. And that's important. Okay. And then there's some other links. So thank you for those resources, Becky. Definitely. So what other kind of questions? We have some more questions or clarification anybody would like Dale or David to answer? Oh, I have one, if nobody says anything. Okay. So earlier we mentioned, I've experienced, in my HR career, I've had situations where, people had to take leave, and, we've been focusing on employers and service members, but what about just the general workplace? Sometimes your coworkers get a little upset that you need to take off and be away. And this can apply to, I've seen it in situations for military members. I've seen it for people that have gone out on leave for medical. There's lots of situations where the work environment just doesn't feel that supportive of that person's absence for actually a legitimate and protected reason. And so does USERRA protect against a hostile work environment?
Yes, a little bit, but not as much as I would like. But again, ESGR is a very good resource to have come down and give a little presentation, and they have boss lifts and things like that where the civilians can go see and what military people do. And also another resource are the veteran service organizations, because they're very, very supportive of members of the National Guard and Reserve when they're gone away, that they've had special programs where they go in and talk to employers. And also a lot of the veteran service organizations go into schools around Veterans Day and give presentations why it's important to be part of the military. And those things are very, very effective, I think.
Okay, I think we've got We can answer maybe this. How can civilian communities better support veterans and military members in these situations? And then you got, oh, I love your cool hashtag. So, yeah, what do you guys, David? I think that would be a good question for you to answer.
Well, yeah, it's. I mentioned that just a little bit on passing, but in fact, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be going and make a presentation to a whole big group of Boy Scouts, young kids, and I was asked to make a presentation why Scouting helps these young boys in the military and how the military helps them become better men. And so that's just one of the events I've involved with. And sometimes we'll get community events as well. And we love to do it.
Yeah. And Boy Scouts includes girls now too. That's what I've heard. That's the word on the street, right?
Well, I think
so it's
we
for
also,
everyone. Yeah.
I think we also need to recognize the fact that the National Guard, when there's emergencies like hurricanes and floods and other things, and the governor can put them on duty to go out and help people. And that's very, very powerful. They've built roads. They've done all kinds of stuff to save people's lives and go out with helicopters and their military equipment and save people's lives. And that needs to be recognized a lot more of how important those services they provide.
I can guarantee if things continue the path that they look like they're going on, there's going to be a lot of opportunities that will rise. And like even just the other morning, I glanced at my Echo show and I saw something about a newer veteran not-for-profit that supports families in the communities that had started. And they got a lot of media attention. And so I'm going to be reaching out to them and saying, how do we partner and how do we join forces and make your efforts even better, exponentially. And so I encourage you, anybody that wants to support the veteran and military community, if you have an interest, we want you. We don't, it's not that, oh, you didn't serve, no. Everybody that has an interest in supporting the community has a part to play.
Well, the American Legion used to have a program where they had the commander and the Madam President was supposed to do a service project, and that's kind of gone away. I actually went down to Price and dug some holes and put in some trees to a family that got a new house through Habitat to Humanity. We went down and worked on a house down there to help a family, and we need to get the Veteran Service Organization to do more of that and publicize it. So
definitely. And I hope society and our communities prove me right that we're going to see a lot more support. And if you feel like there's a gap in your community, don't be afraid to start something. It really takes a village for sure. So we're getting close to the end of, well, actually, wow, we have 1 minute left. Oh, we could talk all day about this because as we know, people are unique and dynamic, and there's going to be different situations. While we want to tell you a bit about what there is, there are going to be situations that are just a little more complicated that are going to need some more one-on-one connection.
And I am available if people have questions of how the law applies to a specific situation. So, and I occasionally get not enough calls from employers say, how does this work and how does this work?
Yeah.
And I sit down and go through the law and explain where it is in the law and what it all means and things like that. Also, I get probably 1 or 2 calls a month from members of the Uniformed Services said, this is happening, how does USERRA apply? And I describe to them whether USERRA applies to the situation or not. In fact, I was just telling Lisa, a guy called me yesterday from Idaho, said, I've got a problem And so I was tied up. So we had one of my counterparts from Oklahoma call the guy and try to help him. So we're here to help people too. So
Definitely. And calling to ask questions does not open a case.
no, we can answer questions.
It's preemptive. It's strategic. We're getting ahead of the situation before it becomes a situation.
And we don't go out and scold employers. We let ESGRs. We are that
we love the employers. We need to
do for you, Sarah.
Definitely. Well, I want to go ahead and wrap it up. I feel like we could talk about this for hours and hours, and there'll be more opportunities. We could follow up with this at another time too. So, but I want to say thank you very much to you, Dale, and David, for the information that you've shared with everyone today. It's truly been my honor to be part of the conversation. And I look forward to working with you more in the future and to support our military veteran community. So I'll let you wrap us up there, Ryan, and tell us what's next.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to take them off the stage, but I do want to thank very special thanks to Lisa, David, and Dale for continuing to support our veteran community and just bringing us, dropping nuclear value on us. Also, we didn't mention that Lisa was actually one of Military Friendly's Veterans of the Year, which is definitely a great honor. We want to congratulate her for her continued service after service. So also want to thank our sponsors, which, Silicon Slopes, the military chapter. We couldn't do this without them. We couldn't do this without amazing people like Lisa and Becky that are out there. So special thanks to them. Also, special thanks to 10th Mountain Recruiting for also being a sponsor of Vet Social. And really, at the end of the day, from an HR perspective, and this is really Lisa's territory, but also I'm an HR professional. And as I look at this topic, it's so, I wasn't really thinking about it the way I needed to be thinking about it. This is really a relevant topic to HR professionals, because within your formations, organizations, you have citizen soldiers that are out there. And there is going to come a time and place where this information that we receive today and these assets, this information resources out there are going to be invaluable. So definitely reach out to Lisa, David, and Dale and continue the conversation, especially if you need that information. Additionally, and I almost forgot, but I do want to thank the Salt Lake Community College 2, the Utah Department of Veterans and Military Affairs, and the Utah Veteran Business Resource Center as well. Of course, we couldn't do any of this, especially, it's been really a pleasure this year to be partnered and collaborating with Utah so much. I'm not from Utah. I'm actually pretty much lived on and off all my life in the state of Nevada. So I was grateful for Kim showing up. But, it is great because we are the United States, and it's great that we have so much passion coming out of the state of Utah and really trying to help our veteran and military community. And I think we're blessed on that note. So anyways, I'm going to shut this down and just say, make sure that you join our wait list for Vet Social 26 at www.veteransocialsummit.com. Just think about it. We started Vet Social in 2020 with 503 people registering for the event, with 10 speakers from the veteran community. In 2024, we had 25 dynamic speakers with over 1,000 people registered, and it was insane. In 25, we had over 70 plus speakers for the military influencer space, and over 1,400, it was actually 1,483 people registered to attend across 10 virtual stages. It was cuckoo bananas. But this year, it's going to be something dynamic, and we're very happy that you will register and hopefully attend it. So with that, We're out. Thank you very much.